softwares like R software and JAS. Today he will be discussing with us logistical regression, and later on we will be concluding the webinar session. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudhanshuji. And
Also talk about a few softwares.
good evening to all participants. Yesterday we discussed the data basics, and we also discussed the regression analysis. And we only discussed regression of two variables. Today I will take up the multiple linear regression, and will also take up the logistic regression. In simple linear regression, there are only two variables. That is, the regression is only bivariate. There are two variables. One is y, the response variable, and the other is x, the explanatory variable. But in multiple linear regression, there is one response variable, but the explanatory variables may be two or more than two. I will give you an example of multiple linear regression. We have here a data table where the weight of a book and its volume in centimeter cube, and the nature of its cover, that is hard cover or paper bound. This is tabulated, and when we model using the volume, it will be simple linear regression. And like yesterday, I gave you the output of R analysis, and when this linear regression is performed, then we have an intercept of 107.6, and the slope for volume is 0.70864. And you can see that the p-value here is very small, and ultimately of this model, the p-value is also very small. Please notice here that we have R squared. This is multiple R square because multiple linear regression has been performed. And we also have adjusted R square. I will discuss the difference between multiple R squared and adjusted R square after a while. When we model the weight of the book using volume and the cover type, it will become a multiple bivariate linear regression. Here again we have an intercept, we have the slope for volume, and we have one slope for the cover. We have cover, and we have a reference here. Here it is for if the cover is paperback, then this will be added, otherwise not. So we have again, when we perform this multiple linear regression, we have multiple R squared, that is 92.9275, and adjusted R square is 0.9154. And the significance level is shown here, and it is very significant. Now compare this with the previous slide. Previously, the multiple R squared was 0.8026. That is about 80% variability in the weight of the book was explained by volume alone, right? But when we add the type of cover of the book, then the R square becomes 0.9275. That is about more than 92% variability of the weight of the book is explained by adding the type of cover in the regression analysis. And also, now you compare the adjusted R square values. Adjusted R square here was 0.7875, and in the second case it has become 0.9154. This is a very important concept while performing multiple linear regression, that if you add one variable, like here we added the cover type, if you add another variable, if the adjusted R squared value increases, then we say that the variable that we added was worth it. Otherwise, if this adjusted R squared decreases, then we say that there is no significance of adding the second variable. So what is the reference? This will be the output of modeling the weight of the book in terms of volume and cover type. So here the reference level is basically hardbound, hardcover, and for hardcover this value will be 0. But if we include paperback, then we will have to subtract 184.04. And if we have this model output, then out of these 4, you can say that you correctly define the variables. Response variable is the weight, and explanatory variables are the volume and the cover type. One must understand this. What is the response variable and what are the explanatory variables? Now, if we further elaborate on this, we can have an equation for the weight like this. Weight will be equal to the intercept 197.96 plus 0.72 multiplied by volume and minus 184.05 if cover is PB, that is paperback. For hardcover, this for cover you will put 0. Then that is here this term will become 0, and the weight will be only 197.96 plus 0.072 into volume. But if the paperback cover is there, then you will write here 1. In this place you will write 1 and you will subtract 184.05 from the weight. Right. So then finally we will have 13.91 plus 0.72 multiplied by volume, giving you the weight. How do we interpret these slopes and the intercept? For this model, the slope of the volume is interpreted as all else held constant. All else held constant, that is paperback or hardcover. Books that are 1 more cubic centimeter in volume tend to weigh about 0.72 grams in weight. That is, every 1 cubic centimeter increase in volume tends to increase the weight by 0.72 grams. Right. And similarly, we interpret the slope of cover as all else held constant. The model predicts that paperback covers weigh 184 grams lower than the hardcover books. And then intercept is also there, and intercept, as I told you earlier, it is just a mathematical concept. It's just a mathematical convenience. As the intercept does not make sense in this context, it only serves to adjust the height of the line. Excuse me. Now we have another look at R square. R square basically is the ratio of explained variability in Y and the total variability in Y. And this can be found by using analysis of variation, that is ANOVA. And this is how it is calculated. By performing ANOVA, you find the total variability as SS total, sum of squares of total, that is 480.25. And then explained variability is SS model, that is, unexplained variability is SS error, where error is this 347.68. Residuals are basically errors. So this is the unexplained variability. If we subtract the unexplained variability from the total variability, we will get the explained variability. And by taking the ratio of explained variability and the total variability, we will get the R square. This is 132.57 divided by 480.25, that is 0.28. This is how we calculate the multiple R square. But why do we need this approach of calculating R square? Why do we need this approach for calculating R square when earlier we said that R square is just the square of the regression coefficient? Because in multiple linear regression, we can't calculate R square as the square of the correlation between X and Y, because we have multiple axes. We don't have a single axis, X. We have multiple explanatory variables. Therefore, we cannot calculate simply calculate the R square simply by taking a square. And there is another measure of explaining the variability is adjusted R square, that requires the use of a third approach. That is, adjusted R square is ratio of the explained and the unexplained variability. So, because why this adjusted R square is needed? Because the two predictor value variables may be collinear, because when they may be correlated, and this collinearity complicates the model estimation. Predictors are also called explanatory or independent variables, and ideally they should be independent of each other. If they are independent of each other, then it is okay. But if they are depending on each other, then we simply will be needing the adjusted R square. And we don't like adding predictors that are associated with each other to the model, because oftentimes the addition of such variable brings nothing to the table. If one variable is dependent on the other, and if you have already included one variable, then there is no point. The addition of the other variable, which is dependent on the first variable, may not add to the value of the table, right? So therefore we prefer the simplest model or the parsimonious model. So, and experiments are usually designed to prevent correlation among predictors. So this is the importance of adjusted R square. And adjusted R square is always less than the R square value. This is always less than. When any variable is added to the model, R square increases. But if the added variable does not really provide any new information or completely unrelated, adjusted R square does not increase. We want that when we add a variable in the multiple linear regression, the adjusted R square value should increase. Let us see how this is performed. And we also this is a multiple linear regression model where this is an example where a professor's rating has been modeled on various parameters, various explanatory variables like this. And you can see that when on seeing this table, you see that here the probable p value is also given. But only the p value shaded in this shown in this shaded area, this is very high. That is, it does not meet the significance level requirement. That is 0.29 is no significance level. 0.06 is more than 0.05. the best possible 0.05 significance level. This is again less. This is again this is again high p value. This is again p value. So we should remove the remove these variables from our analysis because they don't add anything to the this thing estimate of the professor's rating. So this I showed you that we need to remove the non-significant explanatory variables. Now, when we prepare a multiple regression model, we need to follow certain criteria for the selection of variables. There are two approaches to this. One is the backward elimination approach, and backward elimination approach, there are two further approaches. One is adjusted R-square approach and other is p-value approach. So in backward elimination, what we do, we start with a full model. All possible variables that on which the response variable may depend are included in the model. And then we drop one variable at a time. Out of all these variables, we drop one variable and record the adjusted R-square value of each smaller model. And if suppose there are 9 variables, we remove one variable and then find the adjusted R-square value and note that. Then we remove the other variable, then find the adjusted R-square value. And this way we find the model that leads to highest increase in adjusted R-square. And this process is repeated until none of the models yield an increase in adjusted R-square. I just need to take some break, please. Excuse me. Yes, I'm sorry. Now we repeat this process till we pick the model with the highest increase in adjusted R-square. Then we have a p-value approach in which we start with a full model and we drop the variable with the highest p-value and refit a smaller model and repeat until all variables left in the model are significant. So this is one example of the backward elimination approach. Here all the variables are included. We have adjusted R-square value of this. Then we remove one variable at different instances and we pick the model with the highest increase in adjusted R-square. Here it was 0.0839, now it is 0.0843. And then we take this model and then remove one variable and then note the increase. Similarly, we repeat this process and keep on noting the increase in adjusted R-square. And for the p-value approach, we drop this variable having the most p-value, and in the second stage we drop this variable. In the third step we drop this variable, and next step we drop this variable, and next step we drop this variable, and we are left with this one, this, and these parameters. So The best model is beauty plus gender plus age plus tenure. This is the approach. Then there is forward selection approach, in which we start with the regressions of response versus each explanatory variable. We pick the model with the highest adjusted R-square, add the remaining variable one at a time to the existing model, and once again pick the model with the highest adjusted R-square. And we repeat until the addition of any remaining variables does not result in higher adjusted R-square. When the adjusted R-square does not further increase, then we stop, and that is the best model. Similarly, for p-value approach, we pick the variable with the lowest significant p-value, add the remaining variable one at a time to the existing model, and pick the variable with the lowest significant p-value. Repeat until any of the remaining variable does not have a significant p-value. This is the way we do the forward selection. We follow two approaches: adjusted R-square approach and the p-value approach. So this way, we have found the final model in which these are the parameters, these are the variables included, and you can see that each of these variables has, this one is to be revoked. All of these are p-values are similar. So this is how we do multiple linear regression. I will take up the demonstration in R on real data. Now we further go to logistic regression. In logistic regression, we use the generalized linear models. This is again a linear model, but it's called generalized linear model. And logistic regression is one example of the generalized linear models. In a generalized linear model, we have a probability distribution describing the outcome variable, and then we have a linear model. And we also have a link function. We have a link function that links this probability distribution with the linear model. So we have a link function. And in logistic regression, this link function is called the logit. It is called logit. And logit is equal to log of the odds. This is probability of one outcome. We have, in fact, we are dealing here with the two outcomes, right? So this is the probability of one outcome, and this is the probability of the other outcome, 1 minus p. And if we take the log of this this ratio, then we get the logit. And logit is in fact what we get from the formula GLM. We use in R, we use this function GLM, where status is the response variable and age is the explanatory variable. Then we also specify family equal to binomial. Then we use GLM. Then we get the model as we get an intercept, and we get the slope of the age. Right. For assessing the criteria of the significance of the model, we have Aiken's information criterion. This score, this should be minimum for a better model. Suppose if we add another variable to one pre-existing variable in the model, then this AIC score should decrease. It is analogous to the adjusted R-square parameter in the multiple linear regression, right? So this is the model, log of p over 1 minus p. This is the intercept 1.8185 minus 0.665 into age. This is the logit basically. This is the logit. And then we can find the odds. Please ignore this title here. This is an example that I give. This is the probability of survival of a newborn. So this, if we put this, we evaluate this logit for age 0, then we get the probability of survival of a newborn. This is 0.86. Similarly, we can put the age 25 here, This is the probability of survival of a 25-year-old person. Odds or probability. If it is 50, then the probability of survival becomes 0.185. You can see that as the age increases, the probability of survival also decreases. So this logit basically is log of the odds, right? And you can also find this these odds by exponenting the this logit function and then finding out the probabilities. Like here, this is the formula. This is the hypothesis test, and you see that this is significant. The p-value is significant. And another one parameter, that criterion that evaluates the performance of a logistic regression model is the receiver operating characteristic curve, ROC curve. ROC curve shows false positive rate on the x-axis and true positive rate on the y-axis, and this ROC curve has an area. This is the area under the ROC curve. This should be as high as possible. For the best possible classification, this ROC area under the ROC curve should be high. That is, this curve should be like as much possible like this. If it is something like this, then it is not a good classification. So I will also show you how to find the ROC curves. And this is a straightforward way to compare the performance of a model. And then the area under the curve, AUC, is an assessment of the predictive ability of a model. I will demonstrate this also. And when we compare two models, we see that this blue model is not a better one. Earlier one was better model because it has larger area under the curve. So we will take up the R demonstrations. Please allow me some time to switch over. Here it is. First, I will show you multiple linear regression. I hope everybody is able to see, especially people who are viewing this on their mobile phones. I am taking up this data, reading this data, control enter, names. These are the variables that are stored in the this database. Then what is the sex of this? Sorry, I attach this data and then find the sex. There are 152 males and 161 females. Then, like yesterday, we can plot the box plots also, do the explanatory, pictorial representation. And then I come to, this is the logistic regression. So for logistic regression, this is the model of upper arm where the sex is predicted from the length of the upper arm. So we write the command glm and family binomial, and then this is the model and this is the summary of the model. You see that this is significant, highly significant, and the AIC is 352. Right. In similar way, then we predict it, and we prepare a table of this prediction. And you see that if we only use the upper arm, then 102 of the 152 males are correctly classified. 102 males out of 152 are correctly classified, and 117 females out of 161 are correctly classified. So you can find from this the true positive rate. And this is, now we will plot this ROC curve, and this is the ROC curve. This is the ROC curve. You see that this curve is not a very good curve, and it does not classify very well. But I will take up another model where we use the foot length of the person, right? So here, in place of upper arm, I will take up foot length and then prepare the model. And this is the model. Then predict. I see that now 127 out of 152 males are correctly classified, and 136 females out of 161 is are correctly classified. Thus, this means that the true positive rate, the true classification rate, has certainly improved. Now let us see. Let us see what is the ROC curve for this. Now you see a better ROC curve. You see a better ROC curve. It is more, having more area below this curve. So it is a better classification curve. And area under the curve is another criteria that you can classify. And this is going to be a very good classification, excellent classification. Right. So this is the way we do logistic regression. And we can combine these models also. Please forget this upper arm, because I did not change the title of the this model. Now suppose if you have a foot length and I add another variable, say hand length, hand breadth. Hand breadth is another variable in this. Now see, when we add foot length and hand breadth, please keep a tab on this AIC. AIC is 246 here, 246 for foot length. When we include hand breadth in this model, then the summary of this model is AIC has decreased to 166. So certainly it's a better model, and all of these probabilities are highly significant. And now let us see the predicting power. Now we see that 136 out of the 152 males and 146 out of the 161 females have been correctly classified. And what do we expect now? The ROC curve will look like more towards this side. Let us see. See, now it has more area below this curve. So this is how we can prepare logistic regression models. And we can combine different models. You can practice further on these lines. Suppose further we add another variable, say foot length, foot breadth. What happens then? Then ROC, AIC was 166. Now it is 167. Now AIC has increased from 166 to 167. We don't want an increase in AIC. Therefore, we did do a good thing by adding the foot breadth. And also, you can see in the model that this foot breadth has a probability value of 0.06, and it is not significant at all. So we should not include this variable. Foot breadth and hand breadth and foot length explain very well the variabilities in the sex of the population. Right. So this is all I wanted to tell about the multiple linear regression and logistic regression. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you about the linear regression, multiple linear regression. Again, we take up this data, and then we make a model like this. This is model of TBR, model TBR, that is stature versus TBR. This is the model, and this is the summary of the model. You see that the p-value is very small, and adjusted R square is 0.5937. If I include this variable, say foot length, then this model becomes this, and again these are significant. Foot length and TP are both significant, and the adjusted R square has increased to 0.7605. Earlier it was 0.5937. So we did a good job in including the foot length, right? So if in case of multiple linear regression, if we add a variable and the adjusted R square increases, then we have done a good job, and this will be significant. But if the adjusted R square decreases, then it should not be included in the model. Similarly, for logistic regression, if the AIC score decreases after adding the variable, then we should retain that variable, and if it increases, then we should not take that variable into consideration. This is how we perform the logistic regression and multiple linear regression. So logistic and logistic regression can also be performed on multiple variables, and my experience has shown that when this is actually the logistic regression is a two-class problem, right? And for two classes, it is better than other classification algorithms. For two-class problem, its performance is better than any other algorithm. So I prefer to use a logistic regression in classification where only two categories are involved. So this is all I have in mind today for today. But I will further. If you remember, in the first session of this webinar, I talked about the importance of databases. So please give me some time. I want to connect to my Linux machine, and it may take some time, maybe up to 5 minutes, but I'm connecting to my machine, and I'll show you the automatic systems of voice speaker identification and facial identification. And then I will tell you the importance of databases and how we find the likelihood ratios in that case. Please allow me some time. Yes, I am connected to my Linux machine. Let me share the screen. Do you see this? Can somebody tell me that are you seeing this Linux desktop? Hello? Okay, so we have a hello. Can anybody confirm that time you are seeing this machine?
Yes, sir.
Linux
Yes, sir.
desktop?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay, okay. So we have a speaker recognition system, automatic speaker recognition system that we developed in collaboration with the IIT Mandi, and basically it is not a very advanced system, but it is uses the Gaussian mixture models. And I'll show you how it works. Are you seeing this terminal also?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how we activate the system. Oh, sorry. Sorry. It is based in Python. And we have a GUI here. And first we need to, we have a training library. And this is called the Disguise Voices library. I will train on this library. And the training is taking place in the background. It will take a moment. Okay, the training is complete. Now I do a single test in which I have an audio file of someone called Ravi. And this is the voice of Ravi in a wave format. And I pick this, and then using the trained library, I identify this person. And so this result is Ravi. This file belongs to Ravi of the Disguise Voices. In this Disguise Voices directory, the voice of Ravi has been actually matched to the voice of his voice in the database. And now you can see here that we have 10 persons in this database. And when this comparison was made, there is a score related to each of the person. The voice was of Ravi, and there is a score of each person. And you see that highest score has been given a confidence interval of 1, that is matching. Highest score, that is 3586.20. And other scores are less. These are all negative scores. So this is a score-based identification technique. And I want to show the importance of a database. That is, this is a small database. This way, we can create databases of relevant population, where say 100 or 200 or more than more people, their voices have been recorded, and all these voices are recorded under different conditions. Suppose normal voice recorded over a microphone, then same voice transmitted through a mobile phone, the same voice transmitted from on a landline phone, and then we can also have some recordings which contains noise. All these various conditions are used to record the voices of one particular person, and these will be kept in a folder like we did here, here. That is, this was a folder, Disguise Voices. We had a folder corresponding to each of these persons, and each of these persons will have many recordings, 1, 2, all in wave format. We have 5 different recordings, right? So this way we can create a database, and then using this database we can have different sessions also. At one particular occasion, we recorded we have 5 files. After some time, after a week's time or 2 weeks time or month's times, we can have another recording, or we can have multiple sessions, and all these sessions will be trained, and all these recordings will be compared with each other, and we will know that one recording, one person's recording has been will be compared with all of the available persons, and in this scenario there will be same person comparison also, and there will be different person comparison also, right? The person, for one person, his different recordings of different sessions will be compared, and for other persons the comparison will also be there. So we'll have different comparisons, different speaker comparisons and same speaker comparisons, and we will have scores corresponding to the same speaker comparisons and different speakers comparison. Now we have, if we have these scores, then we can, for the complete database, for the complete same speaker, say there are 100 same speaker scores, then we will find the mean of these scores. And similarly, for suppose we have 3,000 different speaker comparisons, we will also find the mean of these different speaker scores. And once we have these means, we also will have a common standard deviation for this. And using this same speaker and different speakers, we can construct the probability density curves for the same speakers and the different speakers. And when we have a recording of, in a real case, we have a suspect recording, that is a question recording, and then we have a recording of the suspects taken in the laboratory or in the courts. And we then make comparison of that question recording with all the suspect recordings, and we will get some scores. These scores will more likely be, if the suspect is involved, then these scores will fall in the same speaker distribution, and if these are different, this will be more towards the different speaker distribution. And I showed you the graph in the first session. I showed you how to calculate the likelihood ratios. Then using this question score, we can evaluate the probability in terms of the same speaker distribution and the probability under the different speaker distribution, and the ratio of these two probabilities will give you the likelihood ratio. And likelihood ratio, as you know, this likelihood ratio can be converted into a verbal scale, just like yesterday I showed. So this is how you can use databases in voice comparison. Now we will take up another application. Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry. I'll have to connect again. Now we talk about the facial recognition. Facial recognition, we have two directories where we have one known faces. These are known faces. And then we have test faces. There is one test face. I want to see whether this test face matches with any of the known faces or not. For that, I will give a command here. I will first close this terminal. Yes. The command is this: face recognition, show the distance, and tolerance is 1. And
excuse me, sir. Sir, can you drag that terminal in between the screen because it's partially visible?
Yes. Okay.
Now, perfect, sir.
Okay. Now we are comparing the images in the known folder with the image in the test folder, and we have given the tolerance 1. Tolerance basically, this is for the distance. We actually we have phase embeddings that this program creates phase embeddings, and when it compares two phases, it compares the distance between these two Euclidean distance between the two embeddings. So this will vary from 0 to 1. So I keep the maximum tolerance, and generally this system has a threshold of 0.6. When the distance is less than 0.6, it says there is a match. And if the distance is more than 0.6, then it says the phases do not match. So let us perform this. Now you see that the distance of the test peak, I mean, this is the test peak with the test peak, sorry, JPG is 0.69. One of the with one of the images, the distance is 0.69, but with one peak, test peak, it is 0.0. That is, it is exactly same. In fact, it is the same picture. And for the other third picture, this distance is this is one picture called test. The distance is 0.69. The other picture is test peak. Its distance is 0. So therefore, test peak matches with the test peak. And the third picture is test 2, and its distance is 0.63. So if we don't specify the tolerance here, then it will only show you the match. Yes, it will only show the where there is a match. That is 0 score is there. So this is the idea of the face recognition application that we have been using here, and I perform some publicly. I perform this facial recognition on some publicly available database, and in that database there were about 520 images of about I think 15 persons. There were different poses, different background, different illumination was there, and different expression was there. And I used this recognition on these 1500 images, 1520 images, performing about 2,20,000 or so comparisons. Then I knew the ground truth that this particular image belongs to person A, this set of images belong to A, this set belongs to B, this set belongs to C, and like this. So I compared every image of the person with every other image in the database, and then I had the ground truth that which image belongs to which person. In this way, we found I found the score of each comparison, and then I evaluated the same source scores, modeled the same same source scores, and the different source scores, and then found the likelihood ratio. On the basis of that likelihood ratio, when the likelihood ratio is greater than 1, then the image belongs to the person. If it is less than 1, it is not correctly classified. So on that basis, I could find that 99% accuracy could be achieved in that. I could write 99%. I could classify the faces 99% accuracy. So using the same strategy that we used, that is same source and different source distributions, and using the question image, we can find the likelihood ratio, and on the basis of that likelihood ratio, we can classify whether this image belongs to this person or not. So this is all about the facial recognition system, and this is also all about today. Now we come to the end of this webinar, and if you have any questions, now you can please ask.
So any participant, if you have any question, you can type your question or you can raise your hand. I'm allowing you, you can unmute yourself also, but only unmute once we announce your name. Any participant? Any question from any participant? Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
How it is difficult to do a facial analysis through a scanned photograph, black and white, and taking a sample on a living being?
Sorry.
Scanned black and white photograph and taking a sample for facial comparison from a living human being.
You should not compare. If you want to compare faces, then you need to take a photograph of the living human being also.
Yes, because the case, if I say a case is like any death claim in an insurance industry, so the photograph which is available on a PAN card or on a voter ID or any Aadhaar card, and we have to compare the photograph, we have to identify the person on the basis of photos available from the hospital record or any old record. So in the industry of the like insurance, they have a very poor quality photographs, a very low pixels, like I can say a 75 or the 50 pixel photographs. So how it is difficult to reach a conclusion? How we can reach to the conclusion?
I think even if it is an old photograph, it does not matter. My experimentation has shown that this system could recognize my present face with my face in the past photographs of my youth or my adolescence. At least to the youth age, all these photographs could be matched with my present photographs. So I don't think time is a factor, or unless the person has drastically changed. But I have not encountered this problem, and I think it can be compared. And another point is that sometimes you may not have photographs, and these photographs may be of very poor quality. Then we have another method that I cannot discuss right now, but it is about extracting the facial landmarks of the person, the facial indices of the person. And I have also worked on this problem, found the facial indices, and then try to classify the photograph as belonging to some person or not. That is also, work is almost complete, and I am soon going to publish it somewhere or present in some conference. But one problem with this database is that this facial recognition system is that this has been trained on Western population. It is not specific for Indian population, and sometimes it is not able to approximate the face in the Indian context. For that, we will be making efforts to make indigenous databases, that is databases relevant to the population of India or the part where we live in.
Thank you, sir. Pragati, you can ask your question. Pragati Singh.
Okay, if there is no question, but I am still open to your queries, you can contact me on email, or you can contact me through phone. And how do I share my email ID? My email ID is rkvarma.fslmnd.hp@nic.in. You can correspond through this email, or you can find this email on the official website of Himachal Forensic Science. Right, I'll be available to answer all your queries or discuss with you any problem that you have or you want to take up, and I will be more than happy to be associated with that. Thank you very much.
Pragati, do you have the question? Okay. Sudhanshu ji.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and consideration and agreeing for this webinar for 3 days. And I would like to thank you for bringing the new insights, especially in facial recognition and speaker identification and authentication. And before we proceed to the closing of this particular webinar, I would request you to kindly address the audience and give your closing remarks regarding the experience of this webinar, as well as to our school, and whatever you want to share from your wise experience.
Well, it was a very good experience for me, and I'm thankful to Raksha Shakti University and the School of Forensic Science and Risk Management for providing me an opportunity to talk to interact with the various participants. And of course, it was a new experience, but a great experience for me. But somehow, because the webinar was scheduled at the end of the day, it was a bit tiring to wait for the whole day and then deliver the talk. But still, I enjoyed the talk, and I'm really impressed by by Dr. Ranjit Singh and Dr. Sudhanshu Shekhar Tiwari, who have very efficiently organized this webinar. And I hope to see further such events organized by your respective institutions, and would definitely like to share my experiences and my learnings with all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We are just waiting for this pandemic to get over. We surely invite you here so that our students can interact with you one-on-one. And the whole session was so informative. So I would like to thank you for that also, for bringing these new insights to us. I would like to request Dr. Ranjit Singh, who helped us in organizing this particular webinar when we faced with the technical difficulties. So thank you very much, sir. And I would also, before we proceed on to acknowledge and appreciate Dr. Rajesh Verma sir efforts in this webinar, I would like to thank our knowledge partners, which are ICFSA and FOS, that is Forensic System, and Soniara Technologies. I would like to request Dr. Ranjit Singh to kindly felicitate Dr. Rajesh Verma, as well as give some closing remarks pertaining to this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sudhanshuji. Thank you, sir, for taking such an informative webinar and giving the different aspects of the statistics which is used in forensic sciences. And it is very important for newcomers and the new researchers to understand the basics behind and the scientific admissibility behind any tools development or any opinion if they are forming, how they are able to convince the court. Thank you for giving your valuable time on all these 3 days. So soon, as Sudhanshu said, soon we are going to invite you in the Raksha Shakti University when this pandemic over. But as we are in a virtual space, so I will request you to kindly accept our certificate of appreciation for giving a valuable this 3 days webinar. And on behalf of Raksha Shakti University and School of Forensic Science and Risk Management, I like to thank you on behalf of Sumit sir also for giving your time and sharing your valuable knowledge. And definitely the whole audience, they have benefited by the knowledge and they are going to use this, all the like research methodology and other things in the future. So thank you once again, sir. Thank you for giving your valuable knowledge to the whole audience.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure interacting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.